Welcome to another flip video lesson with me, Mr. Volkman. Today's flip video lesson is going to go over chapter 7.3, and we'll be talking about the Egyptian Empire. More specifically, we are going to talk about the Middle Kingdom and the New Kingdom. Let's begin, shall we? The Middle Kingdom began after 200, give or take, years of upheaval within the Egyptian Empire. One of the things I read talked about how instead of having one big main ruler or central ruler who controlled all of Egypt, there was a bunch of small rulers who ruled from various locations throughout the Egyptian Empire. However, after these 200 years of upheaval, one man rose up and took control of the whole shebang. From about 2050 to 1670 BC, the Middle Kingdom provided an era of stable living and lots of prosperity. In this time, the Egyptian Empire controlled Nubia to the south, and they attacked Syria to the northeast. Through these campaigns, they drastically increased their amount of farmland. Now, I am going to enlarge this map so we can take a look and compare the amount of land they had in the Middle Kingdom to the Old Kingdom. So here's the Old Kingdom. As the key to this map says, the brown area is the area they directly controlled, whereas the green is the area that they had influence on. Maybe they didn't really have full control over it, but they influenced the people who lived there. So as you can see, the amount of influence they had increased dramatically. But also did the area they control got a little wider as well during the Middle Kingdom. During the Middle Kingdom also, we can see artistically that the scenes in the pharaoh's tombs were way more colorful. This is an image of a coffin that could be seen in one of the tombs. Sculptors made pharaohs seem more ordinary. They weren't these highfalutin god-like people who no one could attain to be like. No, they were like one of the ordinary people. Makes me wonder, why would the pharaohs want to be seen like ordinary people? Why not? Why wouldn't they want to be seen like these huge god-like people? It's a good question. Also, instead of being buried in these massive pyramids, they started being buried in these secret tombs built into cliffs, kind of a way to ensure that their mummies and their goods weren't stolen by thieves. Now, the end of the Middle Kingdom came in about 1670 when a group known as the Hyksos came and took over ancient Egypt and ruled instead of the Egyptian rulers. Now, they did use superior weapons to take over Egypt. Something else I briefly read stated that during this time when the Hyksos were able to take over Egypt, there was a time of famine, a lack of food, and you could say that the Egyptians were ripe for the picking. And the Hyksos ruled for about 100 to 120 years. Now let's move on to the New Kingdom, the final group of dynasties in ancient Egypt. And the New Kingdom lasted from 1550 BC to 1080 BC. Now this was really the time when ancient Egypt reached the height of its power and its influence. Once again, I'm going to make this map a lot bigger, and that might, and we can see in this map ancient Egypt's direct control and their influence was greatly increased. A lot. Now, if you remember from learning about ancient Mesopotamia, whenever the Assyrians or Babylonians' power and influence got too big, what ended up happening? If you said that they ended up falling apart, you'd be correct. Let's see if this happened to ancient Egypt. Well, in about 1473, we had one of the few queen or female pharaohs of ancient Egypt, Hatshepsut. Now her focus was more on trade, gold, ivory, wood, and not as much about the actual conquest that some of the male pharaohs had. Thutmose III, on the other hand, he wanted to expand. and he did. And the borders went north to the Euphrates River and south to Nubia. And as this picture shows, with Thutmose grabbing the hair of his enemies, and I assume he's holding up some kind of weapon of destruction. Yeah, he was a man that liked to fight. I don't know if you could say he liked to fight, but he liked to conquer. Now let's talk about a pharaoh by the name of Amenhotep IV. Now Amenhotep IV did change his name, and you'll find what his name is in the textbook. I'm going to leave it as a big cliffhanger. But Amenhotep IV was a very unusual pharaoh. He saw that the priests were gaining more power, and that combined with him seeing that maybe the Egyptian gods of old weren't exactly who they thought everyone thought they were, decided to change the religion of ancient Egypt from having many gods and goddesses to having one god. And as a result of this, he also moved the capital away from the Nile River. He removed any priests who did not follow this new god. Now, the new god in pictures is seen as a sun with rays coming down. It looks like kind of hand-shaped items. Now, many people did not accept this new god, and as a result, Amenhotep, didn't last overly long. At the same token, when he did finally die, from what I remember from other ancient Egypt classes, his name was literally struck from Egyptian records and chiseled out of the records because he changed things so much and angered so many people. Now, during this time, the Hittites from Turkey came and took back all the land that was in Western Asia. And again, some people may say that, hey, you changed gods, look what happened. Now, Tutankhamun, who was the son-in-law, I should say, of Amenhotep IV, became pharaoh at the age of 10 years old. Now, with the help of priests and other officials, he started returning ancient Egypt to the old religion. However, he did only rule for 9 years, and in the grand scheme of things, wasn't that huge of a pharaoh. So you may be asking, why are we spending time talking about him, and why will we be reading about him in the textbook? Well, that's because many, many years ago, some English archaeologists found his tomb largely intact, and they found many things that have taught us about this time in ancient Egypt. Finally, like all good things, ancient Egypt had to come to an end. But before that happened, Ramses II, pharaoh from 1279 to 1231 BC, enlarged the empire once again. He built new temples. These new temples were used as banks to house great valuables. He also built these huge temples to house the gods and goddesses. The priests and the priestess did many rituals in these temples as well. But again, as I said, all good things must come to an end. And as a result of a lack of superior weapons, Egypt was invaded by the Libyans from the west, the Cushites from the south, and finally, the Assyrians from the west. This ends this flip video. Again, this is just an introduction to what you guys will be reading in the text and the worksheets you'll be working on. Please check Edmodo to go over any questions or assessments that you will be taking. Thank you, and I'll see you later in class.